I talked to one group of leaders, and uh, it was women leaders, and it was like 6 months later, this lady emailed me, and she said, I started with one note like every other week, and then I started doing two, and now I do three a week. She said, I cannot tell you when I walk through all the cubicles of all these thousand people who work for me, how many notes I see out, like, tacked up in a cubicle or sat out on a cubicle. It's like a badge of honor. She said, I had no idea I was going to have that impact.
I'm super excited for you to meet a very special guest today, and her name is Amy Daughters. Amy Whelan Daughters, award winning author and keynote speaker, believes in a world where what makes us different is the very thing that connects us instead of separating us. She brings that world to life by helping people reconnect to each other through the power of handwritten letters. She brings her wit, humor, and having written 580 handwritten letters to every single one of her Facebook friends to show how you can find deep connection in some of the most unexpected places. This conversation you are going to love. I absolutely love this conversation with Amy, and it actually blew my mind away about the power of handwritten notes. And so I really look forward to you listening into this conversation with Amy, and maybe, just maybe, you will go and write some handwritten notes to your colleagues or your employees or even your Facebook friends after you've listened to this conversation. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation, and I look forward to chatting with you again afterwards. Do you wish that you could lead your team in a way that honors and glorifies God? Are you struggling to overcome self-doubt as a leader and have a desire to be more confident in your role? Welcome to the Woman of Faith in Leadership podcast. I'm Rika, and for the last decade, I've experienced my fair share of managing challenging employees and teams in middle management leadership roles. I committed my leadership journey to God, and it changed everything. And I'm ready to share everything I've learned with you. Now, if you're ready to lead your team in a way that honors God, grab that notebook and pen, and don't forget your chai latte, and let's dive in. Now, before we jump into the episode, I'm going to quickly interrupt myself to tell you all about confidence coaching and how you can win one of 5 sessions with me to celebrate the 100th episode of the Woman of Faith in Leadership podcast coming up next week. So exciting. On the 24th of February, we are celebrating 100 episodes. And to celebrate that, I'm giving away 5 confidence coaching sessions. Now, what will you be getting in this confidence coaching session? Well, we're going to get together for 60 minutes. And in that 60 minutes, we are going to dig deep into what causes your self-doubt. Where does it stem from? And what is your triggers for this self-doubt? Then, after we've done that, I'm going to give you some strategies on what you can do to get past your self-doubt. Now, look, it's not going to only take 60 minutes for you to get past that. You're actually going to go and have to do the hard work after and practice what you've learned. But I'm going to give you the strategies, and I'm also afterwards going to give you an action plan, which we're going to start together as part of the 60 minutes. We're going to give you an action plan that you can take away after that 60 minutes, and you can go and have a look at that action plan. What did you commit to? What are some of the actions that you are going to take to become confident? Okay, I wish I could click my fingers and then you're going to be confident. However, you're going to have to do some hard work. But the hard work starts with a coach that can keep you accountable, a coach that can help you to give you the strategies and talk with you about, what happened this week, what are you going to try, what didn't work, what worked really well, where did you step up, where did you fumble. Okay, so come to the womanoffaithinleadership.com website where you can enter to win one of these 5 sessions. Let's get to the interview with Amy. Hi, Amy. Welcome to the Woman of Faith in Leadership podcast. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, it's such a big pleasure. And as we were saying before, it's just amazing. You're in America, I'm in Australia, and we get to connect on an amazing platform like podcasting. So why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your leadership journey, and then the topic that you'll be introducing to us today?
All right, my name is Amy Weinland Daughters, and I am an author, keynote speaker, a freelance writer, and often write about sports. Um, My leadership journey began. Everything that's happened to me in my career has happened pretty unexpectedly, except for the beginning. I started off in purchasing. I got a business degree from a university here in Texas, and then I, went about my merry way in purchasing for about 15 years, and was in a management role there. And then my husband got a call at his job and said, "Would you like to move to the UK for 3 years?" And we sat down and talked about it. We have one small child. We're like, "This will be an adventure. Let's go." We're in our 30s, so we go over there for 3 years, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have a work visa. What am I going to do?" And I knew that was going to happen, but I didn't realize how much I was going to struggle with all the time I had on my hands. My son goes to the village school, so I go to the University of Birmingham and take history classes and try to gain some traction. And I'd always written at work, and I'd always written the emails I thought were funny and profoundly moving, and I'd always reread them. And I'd written short stories on the side, so I just started writing almost out of desperation, and I just created this space for myself. By the time we got home and had another child, I had a contract to write about American college football, and I created this little career and have gone on to write 2 books and have this speaking career. So I think the thing that women can really connect with is that I, the whole time I've written, have struggled and stood up and spoke to people as an author and as a speaker. I've struggled with fitting into that role because I wasn't educated to, necessarily specifically to write. And so I've had to have that confidence, kind of built up inside of me. And I finally got to the point where I took myself seriously enough to write the first book, and that just kicked off this incredible journey as an author, as a speaker, and then now as somebody who speaks to a lot of leaders.
Hmm. That's great. And tell us more about your books that you wrote.
Well, my first book is a fiction book that I had knocking around in my head. I think a lot of people who write, a lot of people who don't write, have a book idea. And so I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll write this hilarious back in time novel, and I'll write myself back to my own childhood. And so basically, I wrote myself back to 1978 when I was 10, and I get dropped off at my parents' house, and they think I'm a distant cousin. I get dropped off right before American Thanksgiving, and my time travel guide says you have 36 hours to spend with these people. Go inside. And I'm thinking this is going to be hilarious because it's going to be vintage and nostalgic. And then when I wrote myself back, and I was my parents' same age as my adult self, and I go into this house, there's my brother and my sister and my 10-year-old self who is just hyperactive and off the chain. I realized if you're going to do that, it's going to be a lot of feelings you're going to have to deal with. So what I did was I wrote a really funny back in time book that ended up being a catharsis in this emotional journey that's super relatable. And so that's book number one, which I'm really proud of. I didn't think would get published because you write a book and you don't think anything's going to happen.
Mm,
And book
amazing.
two, yeah, book two is the story I kind of fell on me. And well, I believe it was, God had it happen to me, and I wrote a book about it, and I speak about it all the time. And that's really the topic I'm, here to talk to you about, which is letter and note writing, handwritten letters, the lost art of handwritten letters, and how it can be used today in 2025, where it can really enhance any arena where there's two humans trying to relate to each other.
Mm. And tell us a little bit more about how you came upon letter writing, because it's such an interesting topic. When we first connected, I was like, that is really a lost art because everything is so digital these days. And if you communicate with your employees, it's either, via Microsoft Teams, or it's yeah, quick message here and there, because it's just so quick and easy and it's like instant.
Right.
Whereas, letter writing is time consuming and it's kind of forgotten. So I'm so curious to know, how did you come upon this topic, and just dive in. Just tell us all about it. I can't wait.
All right. Well, it's a great story, and I like to frame it by first saying I was minding my own business because I was. I had created this writing gig for myself, and it was as simple as me going on Facebook one day, like a lot of us do. I go on Facebook and I think of a girl that I worked with at a summer camp in Texas 35 years ago. So I type her name in, and she's one of those people, and I'm sure we can all relate. Her name had always kind of popped into my head over the years, but we had zero contact before this time. And so I put her name in, and there she is, voila. And since it didn't really mean anything, I friend requested her. She accepted my friendship request. So I did the obligatory delightful 5 minutes of stalking to see what had happened in this woman's life over the last 35 years. And I found out right away she had overachieved in children. She had 5 kids and one son, and he was the youngest. And right away, I found out that this only son was battling cancer. And it was serious enough that he was at St. Jude in Memphis, Tennessee, which is a children's hospital renowned here in the United States for children's cancer. And so the first thing I see is she's asking people to pray. So prayer was always kind of been my thing. So I started, praying, but I didn't like anything. I didn't comment on anything because I felt that was completely disingenuous because, she didn't know who I was. And so, but I did feel myself kind of over feeling it. But as a mom, as a human being, I immediately became engaged because it's the worst case scenario for all of us. And so I get involved in the story, and she's very honest, and we were both really loud at camp and thought we were funny. So I think that's why we connected then. And right away, I was kind of, her personalities is like mine. So I got engaged. And so I watched them battle this cancer. And then Parker went into remission and went back home. And so I was thankful, relieved. I still thought about her. The prayer kind of went on the back burner a little bit because it seemed not as immediate a need. And then later that year, probably 8 months later, her post began to change a little bit and you could see something was going on. And finally, she posted this long post. The cancer was back. It did not sound good. And she's like, again, she asked for prayers. And so again, I prayed. I made it a part of my regular thing. And that next Monday morning, I sat down at my desk to do whatever it was I was going to do. And it was literally like a lightning bolt came and struck me at my desk. And it was like, you know what you're going to do? You're going to start writing Dana and her son Parker cards and just sending them to the Ronald McDonald Hospital, house that they were staying with at Memphis. And I had not written anyone a letter in like 25 years. I wasn't the letter writing girl. And I hadn't had any contact with these people, including on Facebook, in 35 years. That's the other narrative of this story. Kind of the common theme is me being irrational at different stages, like craziness. And so I was so invested, and even though I knew it was crazy, I just couldn't stop myself from doing. Every week I started sending these two people a letter or a card. And really all I said was, I'm praying for you, I'm supporting you, I'm sorry, I hope you remember me. Like this could be awkward. And I just keep sending the notes. And so I don't hear anything back and I don't expect to hear anything back. About 10 to 12 weeks later, the new year passes and this is unthinkable and there's no good words for it and has nothing to do with me, but Parker passes away at only 15. And I was like, what do I do? And I was like, God, what do I do? Because I felt so invested in the letter writing. And it was like a mini lightning bolt. And it was like, just keep writing the letters. And it was just a part of me. I just had to do it. So this time, since I didn't know where she lived, because this was Facebook, and where to send the letters, and you don't ask somebody for their address at this point. I knew her husband at camp too, and he was an attorney. So I just started sending her letters to his law office. No big deal. That's crazy. And again, every week I wrote these letters. I was like, this woman has lost her son. She does not know who you are, and you're sending these letters. But I couldn't stop. And I think now that was God. That's how I frame it. Everybody else is welcome to frame it however they want to. So I send the letters for probably another 4 months, just barely hanging on, thinking, okay. But I'm praying and it's devastating, all the rest of it. And I really was, I had such a heart for them. And I know now that was God. So about 4 months into it, I go out to my mailbox on my 47th birthday, and there's a 10-page letter from Dana, a 10-page handwritten letter. She pours out about her grief, about her kids. She tells me about her family. She tells me how much the prayers have meant, how much it's meant that I've reached out and not stop reaching out, after the casserole stopped coming. And so this kicks off 2 years of us exclusively communicating through the Postal Service.
Wow.
So we wrote each other every week. And there was this incredible vacuum because I didn't know when she read what I wrote. She had no idea when I was reading what she wrote. And so you didn't really feel like you had to reply to anything specifically, which was good because I know nothing about, I know of grief. We all know of grief, but I didn't know, you don't know what to say about that. She opened up and she told me after the fact that I was the one she opened up to about her grief. I told her about my life. I looked at it from the outside in. I gained a completely new perspective on so many things in my life. And I started looking at everything differently. And I was like, if God can do this with this one girl, what happens if I write all my Facebook friends a letter? So then I went bananagrams. I put everyone's name in a box. I got some stationery and I started pulling people's names out. every day. And over the course of 18 months, I wrote 580 handwritten letters.
Wow.
And so not only did it blow up my life and change my heart and really change the trajectory of my life, it made me realize that each of us have in our hand in our own, and we don't have to be a writer. All we need is a human to be a human being with a heart, that we have this incredible power with a handwritten note that cannot be gauged. And I know this not because I think it, because 600 times I watched this happen. And I did it because I was nutso, but it turned out that I stumbled upon this incredible tool we all have in our toolkits, whether we're leaders or friends or, like I said, wherever there's a human relation, that we can absolutely have an impact on somebody we can't explain just by sending them a handwritten note. And I can really go into that, but that's the backstory.
Mm. Yeah, that's so true because when you were just saying that, I was thinking about the handwritten notes that I've gotten from people and the difference between that and just receiving a text message or just receiving like a Facebook Messenger message or things like that. Because that handwritten notes, like I've got handwritten notes from my line manager 3, 4 years ago, and I still hold on to those handwritten notes because they actually mean a lot to me. It means a lot to me that that person who was extremely busy, who had nearly 500 people reporting to them, would actually take the opportunity to write me a handwritten note, like what makes me so special. And so I was wondering, how does this apply to leaders? Like, what can leaders do in their environments? Because obviously, leaders are busy and they don't have time to write everyone a handwritten note every single day or every single week. So, how could this practically be applied in the workplace?
Right. And that point is so well made, that leaders are busy. But I guarantee you that the people who report to you know you're busy. And you just said so much in your example. I mean, that's the best example, because they're going to get that and realize how busy you are. Because here's what you're going to, before I talk about application, like how you can apply this, here's what you're going to give them. They're going to get, whether you mail it to them because there's so many remote workers now, or you set it on their desk, or you inter-office mail it, immediately it's going to click in their head, like click, 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 click. Here's what it took this person to do, like my line manager to do this for me. They had to sit down, they had to take the time, they had to get a pen, they had to think about what they were going to say, they had to physically write it. When they could have sent an email, they could have sent a text, they could have gotten me a gift card, but instead they did this. They sat down, deliberately wrote, they had to think about it, then they had to address it, maybe get a stamp, and then they had to find out how to physically get it to me. And they're going to immediately think, this is how valued I am, this is how much my efforts, that everything I do at this job, that's how much it means to this person. And like you said, they're going to hold on to it forever, and they're going to feel valued on a level that really, you know it rivals almost anything else you can do for them. And I've seen this because I've spoken to people over and over and over and over again about this. And it absolutely has the same impact on every human. And so you're right, leaders are busy. So when do they do this? And I guarantee if you just commit minutes to it, if you commit 15 minutes a week, and I guarantee you, if you do it somewhat regularly, or once or twice or 5 times, you're gonna see what it can do, and then you're gonna make time for it. And again, it's not a huge time commitment. Really, what makes sense is 2 notes a week, you know, 3 notes a week, whatever you can fit in. And it does not have to be 2 pages. Actually, really, the more brief the better. It's like in 2 sentences, you can impact things like retention, employee engagement, and we know that there's, employee engagement is at an all-time low right now, and how do you impact that? And we know that there's nothing more important than that manager direct report relationship in an organization. And I guarantee you, just by doing this, and you don't have to do it to the same person, and to your point of 500 people, you don't have to do it to everyone. But we all know, when we as a human being, as a leader, when we see somebody who has done something extraordinary, and not just won an award, but like knocked it out of the ballpark in a meeting, like made a major contribution. So that's one side of the idea. It's like a congratulations, way to go, thank you, from that side. And then the other side is, you know, we all know at work, and we don't have to get super personal, when someone's lost a parent, when someone's loved one is battling an illness, when something has happened. And it does not have to get super personal, but those are the notes that I've heard the most about, the most impact. Like, oh my God, I can't believe my line manager just said, I'm so sorry about your dad. That, and I mean, somebody writing you about your passed away deceased father, because this has happened to me, already has the impact. But if your manager does that, it's going to blow your socks off. You're going to be like, I matter in this organization.
Mm.
And what bigger thing can you do for an employee than that?
Mm. And I agree with you, because that line manager, I worked with them for 5 years. And over the 5 years, I received 3 notes. And I remember I've got 3 notes. Why? Because it made such a big impact on me. I've still got those 3 notes. It was on these amazingly special cards that only came from the line manager. So you couldn't get those cards. They were specially printed cards.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just something that was so unique. Now, the other thing that I was thinking of, when that line manager left, the new line manager didn't do that. And there was a clear difference between doing that and not doing that. Even like the new line manager that I worked with, they did a lot of individual meetings. So that was their thing. It was meetings, but the meetings did not have as the same amount of impact as what the handwritten note did. And you are so right that the note doesn't have to be a long and winded thing. It can actually just be, I'm so proud of you for this progress that you've made. And so I was thinking, when you were talking about that, my brain kicks into process gear, like SOPs. What SOP could you put into place of this? Not to make it, like boring or just another task, but to help you. Because a leader who's busy, I'm thinking, okay, well, all line managers or all leaders are working with either a leadership team or people who they then line manage. And potentially you could appoint someone to say, okay, you're going to be my eyes and ears. If there's things that happen, I want you on a weekly basis to feed that through to me to ensure that I can then do those handwritten notes. Obviously, to that person, you're going to make sure that you give the handwritten note too, because you kind of owe it to them. But the only way I can think that my line manager did that with 500 people is because she had her whole leadership team, and then they had their leadership teams, and they had their leadership teams, and I even had my own leadership team. And I would expect of my leadership team to let me know what was going on the ground, and then on a fortnightly basis in the leadership team feed back to me what was going on. And that's really how I knew exactly what was going on in my teams, is because of my leadership team. So if this sounds a bit too much, or if it sounds intimidating, I want to say to those leaders listening right now, rely on your leadership team, rely on those employees that you already have, because definitely handwritten notes will make a big difference. So my next question, Amy, I was thinking about the lasting impact of these handwritten notes. And so you mentioned you don't have to write something big or long, or it has to be just a short note or something like that. But for those leaders who are really just starting out with this, who are not used to writing handwritten notes, who've got like no idea even where to start, I mean, you gave a couple of examples already, but would you have any advice to those who are brand new to letter writing? I would think the younger generation would not know a lot about written notes, because they're growing up in a digital world. I'm thinking about even just my teenage daughter, who will potentially also move into a leadership role. I can see her in potentially in a leadership role one day, but she would not do handwritten notes. So what advice would you have?
Well, I think that, I think first of all, from just a practical standpoint, I love the idea of, the custom note, but I don't think you have to have that. I don't think you have to have notes printed. I think that's like next level, but I think that's great. But just keep it simple. I mean, you buy a simple card from your local retailer, that fits your personality, and then you just, even I've told people, you even go look for examples on the internet, if that'll give you confidence at the beginning. You can, even though I really believe that once you get going with this, you won't need any assistance, because you'll realize it was within you, that you had it within you all the time. But, use Chat GPT. I mean, use AI and say thank you note to employee and word it that way, because really it's going to come across as super sincere, because it's what they noticed, or what and I loved your, let's bring it down the line and have someone be your eyes and ears, especially if you have a whole lot of reports. Let them be your eyes and ears. But you taking the time with your name signed on it is going to mean just as much as the message. and they know what they did. They know what's happened. So if you're worried about how to word it, then I would rely on technology because nobody knows that because it's handwritten. And then I would, the other thing I would do is make sure, because this is something I ran into with my own letters. I was pretty sure I assumed I knew how to spell everyone's name, but go look at their name on the whatever your source is for the name, the email or whatever. Go look at their name. And that's the first thing because it won't come across near as well if any of that's compromised. So dear the employee's name, two sentences, like you said, great job in the meeting, great job with your results, great job with whatever it is. And then just the sign off is as simple as, sincerely, Amy Daughters. But writing out your name, they're going to feel like that's a gift too, because you're showing them something with your handwriting. You're giving them something that no one else is going to get, and you're going to have to fight though and I fought this the entire way of the 600 letters because I'm just a human being. You know, I I fought the whole feeling of this is going to be awkward. It's not going to be well received. People are going to think it's weird. I am here to guarantee you that is not what's going to happen. And I know this again. Yes, I've spoken about it, but I've experienced it myself. You just have to jump over the hurdle and do it. Because you have to realize too that a note is non-intrusive. You're going to give somebody something that they don't have to react in front of you. They don't have to say anything back to you. I mean, there's no need to reply to a note usually. You're just giving them a gift that they can hold on to. I talked to one group of leaders and it was women leaders, and it was like 6 months later, this lady emailed me and she said, I started with one note like every other week, and then I started doing two, and now I do three a week. She said, I cannot tell you when I walk through all the cubicles of all these 1,000 people who work for me, how many notes I see out, like, tacked up in a cubicle or sat out on a cubicle. It's like a badge of honor. She said, I had no idea I was going to have that impact. And I think the other side of this equation is the leader who writes a note is going to walk away with so many benefits as well. This transaction is mutually beneficial. And again, I say that as the girl who was changed by letter writing, not as a girl who just likes to sit around and talk about letter writing in the abstract.
Mm. What makes me think is I just actually remembered something that I did. I actually completely forgot I did this, but when you were mentioning about the leader walking through the cubicles, I remembered when I was in that leadership role that I was talking about with my line manager for 5 years, because I worked with my line manager for 5 years as well. And it had actually such an impact on me that she gave me those notes that I actually completely forgot that I did that. Once a year, I would write all my staff a note. And I actually did it at the same time because there was like a special, like a celebration day in September that we always celebrated. And so that's why I did it in particular that day. I mean, it could have been a little bit more authentic and I could have written it right throughout the year, but okay, so you learn. And it was tough because I wrote all those notes. And so I had at any point in time between 30 and 50 people reporting to me. It was just dependent on how many casual staff or relief staff there were. And to write so many notes at one time, it became inauthentic because I would do it just for the sake of doing it. And it was
Right.
then really hard because then I couldn't repeat myself because I felt like, well, what if they exchange notes, or what if they say, oh, Rika said this to me, and then the other one was like, oh, she said exactly the same thing to me. That's a bit disappointing. So yeah, I realize it now. I mean, I didn't even realize it at the time, but I think I had the intention of doing it correctly. But I think that I want to say to the leaders now listening, because I'm extremely open and honest on this, on the Women of Faith in Leadership podcast, about kind of the mistakes I made and how I could have done that better. And I think if you are going to write all your employees a note on the same day, or they all receive their note on the same day, it looks a little bit inauthentic. It's nice, it's a nice gesture, but it doesn't mean as much as if it comes to you at a time when it's really relevant versus just on a one special day in a year.
Right. Yeah. And to pace where it fits and that's the other thing about this. I always tell people, the number one rule in letter writing is there are no rules, because this has to fit your leadership style, the way really, and as as a person, if you're a 5 sentence girl, but I'm a 2 sentence girl, that's great. If your handwriting is better than my handwriting, that's fine. Because you're also showing your humanness because a text or an email or a Slack message, that corrects all the things that could be wrong. But you're showing them, you don't want to misspell everything, but it's an authentic part of you. But this process has to fit your personality. And I don't think if I would expect there to be discomfort at the beginning for most people. There might be the few people who just feel good about it right away and go with it. But other than that, I think you have to do it your way. You do 2 notes a month. You do, but get yourself on a pace and kind of stick with it. And I guarantee you the results, seen or unseen, you're going to feel different. And you're even going to look at your employees different because you're going to look for ways to do this because it's going to make you feel like a better leader. It's just going to fill you with some kind of hope you didn't have before. And again, I say this because I know.
The other thing that you just said is so true, because you are going to start looking for the positive in your team members because you want to write that in a note. So instead of just looking at the negative all the time and seeing how you can performance manage them, because you can get into a rut in leadership quite quickly on the negative. And thank goodness I had an amazing leadership team, because one of my leadership team members had to pull me up on that, because at some point in time I didn't even notice that I was having a very negative mindset, just focusing on everybody's negatives. But with the letter writing, what's so good about that is you have to look for the positive, because you're not going to write a note with negative stuff on it. The reason that you want to write the note is a praise report. It's like you want to praise that person, or not just that, you obviously offer your condolences when someone's passed away, and it just gives that level of like individuality that your line manager knows what's going on in your life, and you're not just another number at the company, but that you said it, that you actually really matter.
Right.
And if an employee feels like they really matter, they are going to be more engaged, back to that point that you made. Because I mean, after COVID, we struggled with the great resignation and then quiet quitting, which is that lack of engagement at the moment. So letter writing is such an amazing way. I would have never thought about that. So you're amazing, Amy. And God's amazing for giving you this vision, because this is a great way to boost engagement.
Right. No, it is. And yeah, you said it all, and that sincerity and being specific. But you can do that with great brevity, though. It does not have to turn into, because you can be super specific and drill it down to a sentence of what they did that was amazing or good, and then put your own personality into it. And again, the results, the number one, I wrote all those letters, and the number one takeaway, like the most common thing people said to me after the fact, and I will save your letter in a special place for the rest of my life. And I'm back to, we all have this tool in our toolkit. We all have this superpower. And it is almost counterintuitive how simple it is. Over and over again, I was blown away that people would be that impacted by a handwritten note or letter. And I still, every day, that's the first thing I do when I sit down at my desk. It honors Parker and Dana. It honors God, that story that God gave me. And it also every day reminds me, Rika, that I can pump out something good into this world. And my notes have gotten shorter, but I keep a notebook next to I say thank you to people I work with. I do it on a professional level, but I also see friends on Facebook where I can, say something, congratulations, I'm sorry. And I keep that list at my desk all the time. And what a great thing to be able to do. And again, it's not because I'm a writer. It's not because I'm a great human being. We all have the skill set. And it's kind of back to my story of becoming a writer. You know, I, I, if we just get out of our own way sometimes, we can do amazing things, and really, I really feel like your leaders who participate in this, they will also be changed. I think they become better leaders, but I think we become better human beings too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I am just so blown away by the idea. And so why don't you please let the listeners know where can they connect with you and where can they purchase your books if they're interested in that?
Right. My website, amydaughters.com, has all the information. The books are available wherever fine books are sold. They didn't tell me to say that, but I like that line. But the links to the books are on there. And then there's more information about me and my story. And then also there's, you can email me. I'd love to hear from people. I'd love to hear from people who want to dive deeper into this, to want to get more specific examples. And my mailing address is on there, because I guarantee you, if you write me, I will write you back. So, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of people connecting with you via letters, because that's literally what you do. So
Yeah, I love going to my PO box and seeing a letter from a stranger. It is
Yeah.
exciting to me.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Just on a final note, I wanted to share just quickly. I remembered when I was little, I had two pen pals, one in Alaska, and I cannot remember for Idaho. Sorry, that was I did forget, but I just remembered as I said it. I had two pen pals while I was living in South Africa as a child, like as a 9 or a 10-year-old. I had two pen pals, and that's what we did, is we just wrote each other notes, and it would take months. It would take months to get another letter back, but I could not wait to get those
right.
notes. It just was so special to me, even as a child. So yeah,
That-
write your children handwritten notes, because that might even mean a lot to them.
What's amazing, and I guarantee if you write your children handwritten notes, they'll hang on to them for the rest of their life. I have a box of my father's letters, and I'm from when I went to university, we all still wrote letters. When I was at camp, we all still wrote letters, and those are a gift now. But it's not something that's gone. And and the speed of electronic communication is necessary. It is, and you and I would not be talking right now if we didn't have the internet. And I would have never reconnected with Dana and found out about Parker without social media. It is such a great jump off point for real relation, and also in the workplace it is as well. But this little simple form of communication is next level, and I guarantee your employees will. They will so thoroughly appreciate it. I cannot wait. I get so excited to think about what will happen when this starts.
Absolutely. And any stories that come through from here, I'm going to definitely share them with you. So thank you so much for being on the show, Amy.
Thank you, Rika. It was a delight. I appreciate it.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts? It would mean so much to me to read your feedback. Also, it would really bless me big if you shared this episode with a fellow leader who might benefit from hearing today's message. And remember, put on the armor of God daily and walk by faith and not by sight. I'll meet you back on Monday for another episode.